Welcome to my channel, where every story comes to life. Dive into captivating narratives that spark your imagination. Let's start today new narrative story. Imagine thinking your life was perfect. Married to your best friend, raising a wonderful child, living in a beautiful house by the beach, until one simple notification turned your entire world upside down. 4. Ethan Blake, a 36-year-old financial advisor from Sydney. This wasn't just a nightmare, it was his reality. What he thought was a loving marriage became a web of deceit, unraveling in ways he never expected. Join me on this emotional roller coaster as we dive into a story of betrayal, heartbreak, and a man's quest for justice. This is not just another tale of infidelity. It's a story about finding truth where lies once thrived. Ethan Blake and his wife, Chloe Blake, live in the vibrant northern beaches of Sydney, a picturesque area known for its ocean views, affluent residents, and laid-back coastal lifestyle. Ethan is a 36-year-old financial advisor, a man of routine who works long hours to provide for his family. Chloe, 34, is a yoga instructor who is well loved in their community, admired for her beauty, charm, and graceful demeanor. Together, they have an 8-year-old son named Jack, a curious and energetic boy who is the apple of his father's eye. Their social circle consists of close friends, many of whom envy the seemingly perfect life Ethan and Chloe have. They often host barbecues on weekends, spend time with other families, and take Jack to the beach for surfing lessons. Ethan, though successful in his career, always felt that family was his greatest achievement, until everything changed. It all started on a warm Saturday afternoon. Ethan sat in their spacious backyard, enjoying a cold beer as Jack kicked a football around. The scent of eucalyptus filled the air, and the sound of distant waves crashing onto the shore provided a soothing background. Chloe was lounging on a deck chair, her phone in hand, typing furiously. "Who are you texting?" Ethan asked with a smile, hoping for a light-hearted response. "Oh, just the girls. We're organizing a yoga retreat," Chloe replied without looking up, her voice too casual, too practiced. Ethan didn't think much of it at first, but as the weeks went by, her behavior grew more secretive. She had become glued to her phone, often texting late into the night, locking her screen when he entered the room. Something felt different. They had always shared everything, but now there was a distance between them. Conversations had become more superficial, and their once regular date nights dwindled into rare occasions. Ethan, always the rational thinker, tried to dismiss his suspicions. After all, Chloe was a busy woman, and he knew his long hours at work didn't help. But there was a nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach that he couldn't shake. One evening, while Chloe was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Ethan glanced at it out of curiosity, his eyes landing on a message from someone named Josh. "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Josh? Who the hell was Josh? Ethan's hands trembled as he stared at the message. His mind raced, piecing together every odd behavior Chloe had exhibited over the past few months. He quickly put the phone down when he heard the water stop, his heart pounding in his chest. He spent the next few days in a state of paranoia, watching Chloe closely, replaying moments in his head. Could she really be having an affair? Ethan had never doubted Chloe before, but now every smile, every glance at her phone seemed suspicious. His mind was consumed by the possibility. Unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, Ethan decided to take matters into his own hands. Late one night, after Chloe had fallen asleep, he installed a discreet app on her phone that synced her messages to his own. He felt a pang of guilt as he set it up, knowing it was an invasion of privacy. But Ethan needed to know the truth. He couldn't confront her without proof. For the next few days, the app picked up nothing suspicious. The messages were casual, often related to her yoga clients or friends. Ethan began to wonder if he had been overreacting, doubting himself for suspecting her. But just when he was about to uninstall the app, the real bombshell dropped. One evening, as Ethan sat alone in his home office, a series of texts between Chloe and Josh appeared on his screen. He froze, staring at the words, his world crumbling around him. Josh wasn't just some casual acquaintance. He was her lover. Josh, a 31-year-old personal trainer at Chloe's yoga studio, had been having an affair with Chloe for months. The texts were filled with flirtation, intimate details of their encounters, and plans for future meetups. Chloe had told Josh things she hadn't shared with Ethan in years, the emotional depth of their conversations, Saint, even more than the physical betrayal. She had confided in Josh, complained about her marriage, and painted Ethan as the neglectful, absent husband. Ethan's hands shook as he scrolled through the messages, each one more painful than the last. He had given his all to their marriage, to their family. How could she do this to him? To Jack? The next morning, Ethan could barely focus. His mind was racing, filled with a toxic mix of rage, sadness, and confusion. He knew he had to confront Chloe, but the thought of the conversation terrified him. He didn't want to believe it was real, but the messages were undeniable proof. There was no escaping the truth. After Jack left for school, Ethan found Chloe in the kitchen, sipping her morning coffee. She greeted him with a smile, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside him. "Chloe, we need to talk," Ethan said, his voice steady but cold. Chloe looked up, her smile faltering. "What's wrong?" Ethan placed her phone on the counter, unlocked, with the incriminating messages on display. He watched as the color drained from her face. She didn't say a word, but her eyes were filled with guilt. "I know about Josh," Ethan said, his voice shaking with emotion. "I know everything." Chloe's hands trembled as she reached for the phone, her eyes darting over the messages. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized she had been caught. She looked up at Ethan, her voice barely a whisper. "Ethan, I'm so sorry." "Sorry? That's all you have to say?" Ethan's voice cracked, his anger rising to the surface. "You've been lying to me for months. How could you do this to us? To Jack?" Chloe broke down, sobbing into her hands. She tried to explain, to justify her actions. She said she had felt lonely, neglected, that Ethan had been too focused on work and not enough on their relationship. She claimed that Josh had given her the attention she had been craving, that it had started as an emotional connection and spiraled into something more. But Ethan wasn't buying it. They had both been busy. They had both struggled with balancing work and family, but he had never strayed. He had never even considered it. Chloe's betrayal wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice, a selfish, deliberate choice. Ethan walked away from the conversation, unable to process the magnitude of what had just happened. He couldn't look at Chloe without feeling a wave of disgust and anger. He couldn't believe that the woman he had loved and trusted for over a decade had done this to him. Over the next few days, Ethan thought about his next move. He wasn't going to make any rash decisions, but he wasn't going to let Chloe off easy either. He wanted justice, for himself and for Jack. First, Ethan contacted a lawyer and began the process of filing for divorce. He made sure that their assets would be divided fairly and that Jack would be protected in the custody arrangements. Chloe had no idea that Ethan was moving so quickly behind the scenes. She thought she still had time to fix things, to repair the damage she had caused. But Ethan had no intention of letting her back into his life. Next, Ethan started subtly unraveling Chloe's reputation. They had a tight-knit circle of friends, many of whom admired Chloe for her grace and beauty. Slowly, Ethan began telling close friends about what had happened. He didn't embellish the truth or paint himself as a victim. He simply laid out the facts, allowing others to draw their own conclusions. Word spread fast. Chloe's perfect image began to crumble. Friends who once admired her now whispered behind her back. Their social circle, once filled with barbecues and weekend outings, now avoided her. Josh, the younger man she had risked everything for, quickly distanced himself from her as well. He wasn't interested in being involved in the fallout of a broken marriage, especially when it became clear that Chloe's life was unraveling. Chloe found herself isolated, her perfect life shattered. The affair had cost her more than just her marriage. It had cost her friendships, respect, and the life she had carefully crafted. Ethan, on the other hand, slowly began to rebuild his life. The divorce was painful, and adjusting to shared custody of Jack was difficult, but he was determined to move forward. He threw himself into his work, focusing on expanding his business and securing a stable future for himself and Jack. He also spent more time with Jack, making sure that his son knew he was loved and supported. They took weekend trips to the beach, went on hikes, and explored Sydney together. Jack, though young, sensed the tension between his parents, but Ethan made sure to shield him from the worst of it. He didn't want his son to carry the weight of their broken marriage. One afternoon, as Ethan and Jack walked along the shoreline, the sun setting behind them, Ethan felt a sense of peace for the first time in months. The pain of Chloe's betrayal still lingered, but it no longer consumed him. He had taken back control of his life, and he was moving forward, one step at a time. And that, my friends, is how Ethan discovered the double life his wife had been leading, hidden behind the simplicity of a mobile chat. It's a stark reminder that betrayal often starts small, with the secrets we think we can keep hidden. But the truth has a way of coming to light, no matter how deeply it's buried. What would you do if you were in Ethan's shoes? How would you handle the situation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.
I'm 47, and my wife is 45. We've been married for 22 years, and we have 3 kids, a 20-year-old son, and 2 daughters, 18 and 16. On September 11th, 2001, my wife planned to meet a man she met online at a nearby hotel. They had been texting and exchanging pictures for months. At that time, we had been married for 2 years, and our son was not even a year old. Surprisingly, the only thing that stopped her was the Trade Center's attack. Her uncle was on the 84th floor of the South Tower, and it was almost certain he died on impact. The entire country was mourning, and she took it hard. I sympathized with her and was there to console her. After some crying, she confessed her plan, expressed regret, and showed me proof that they hadn't gone beyond emotional conversations. Before the confession, I had a gut feeling something was wrong, but I never thought she would have an emotional affair. This shocked me because I thought she wasn't that type of person, having grown up in a sheltered environment. She confessed that she regretted her actions and changed her mind. She apologized and showed me proof that things hadn't progressed beyond an emotional connection. Before the confession, I suspected something, but I had no idea it was an emotional affair. It was shocking because I believed she wasn't that kind of person. She grew up in a sheltered environment, not allowed to party, drink, or go on dates, and she felt like she missed out. When we started our relationship, she told me I was her first, and I believed her. However, after her confession on September 9th, I wasn't so sure. If she would go this far, what else was she hiding? If not for Osama bin Laden, she might have gone through with it, and I would never have known. The fact that she came clean without me finding out contributed to my willingness to reconcile, with the condition of her getting counseling. Additionally, I saw no proof of a physical affair. I remembered how the entire experience crushed me. Despite canceling the plan, she was remorseful and did the right things. It took a long time, but eventually, the pain faded into a memory. Trust, however, is like a clean sheet of paper. When damaged, it becomes deformed with infidelity, like crumpling it into a ball. You can smooth it out, but it will never be as pure as new. Trust became a personal issue for me. Even as I got comfortable with the reconciliation, I still had to check on my own just to be sure. She passed those checks, smoothing things out somewhat. But it was never perfect again. Then, 19 years later, on October 14th, 2019, with 2 more beautiful children, I had a gut feeling. I hate having gut feelings. One Monday morning, she had an argument with our 18-year-old daughter. Later that day, I made my daughter laugh, but my wife, still upset, left the house. She turned off her location sharing, raising my suspicions. The trust that had never fully restored needed reassurance, so I kept trying to check her phone, computer, and anything else that might be helpful. The next day, we had to get a passport for our youngest at the post office. She was aloof, constantly on her phone, and I made a mental note to check it out later. Usually she left her phone around, but lately she carried it everywhere, another unsettling feeling. We bought her an iPad, and she locked it with a passcode, which surprised me. We don't usually use passcodes, and although she explained it was for work, doubts remained. On Friday, we closed on a home equity loan at the bank, and she said she had to run an errand. Checking her check-ins, I found out one stop was at an adult store. I looked for items when I had the chance and found a nice piece of lingerie. Our bed life had been stagnant due to her lack of interest, prompting her to look for information on female desire issues. Curiosity led me to monitor what I could. Finally, I got the passcode to her iPad and discovered explicit Facebook messages with a guy. Even though they weren't friends on Facebook, she responded as if she knew him. The conversation turned explicit, and when he suggested she drop her daughter off and come over, she declined, saying, "My stories aren't set up like that." Instead of holding on to this information and its source to get a clearer picture, I ended up confronting her that evening, which was a big mistake. It was too soon because she lied and took the affair underground. She said the lingerie was for us, claiming she was building up the courage to wear it for me. She also said the guy on Facebook was a summer co-worker who started messaging her out of the blue. She swore there was no physical contact, just texting. I want to believe that, but it's hard for me. I insisted it had to end completely, and she agreed immediately. The next day I asked if it ended, and she said yes. Unbeknownst to her, I could see their messages through other means. She lied, and now, after 19 years, it's happening again. My emotions are a mess. I can't eat or sleep and have a hard time concentrating. I'm starting counseling this week and hitting the gym more. This situation sucks, and I don't want to go through it. I've been reading the 180 almost daily since D-Day. I pulled it off well for a couple of days, but today was rough. I got almost no sleep last night. Our son, who works at a local theater, gave us tickets to come from away. We had to pretend everything was great to not disappoint him. At 20, he's a great kid. If you're not familiar with the show, it deals with the trading center story, and it was tough. I've kept a journal, observing dates, times, and my thoughts. I've come up with a mantra. Keep cool, keep patient, keep control. I need to be more consistent, but it's something I've been trying to get to. I've gotten into a better headspace. Now we have to go shopping tonight, and I want to practice the 180 as best as I can. Fast forward to July 3rd, 2021. My investigation revealed her contact with other men through the summer school program where she works as a teacher's aide. He's the gym teacher. Affair partner is 32 years old. The wayward wife is 47, making her a cougar, I guess. The fair partner is a gym teacher at a nearby school, and his wife works at a different school, not even in the same district. The wayward wife met him while they were working at summer school. Summer school here is run in a few districts, so teachers from different districts work together. I found out he would be there again, observed quietly, and caught a suggestive Facebook message. He rejected her, which made me chuckle. I've actually come to believe he sees her as a friend and doesn't want to get involved. She's 47, about 15 years older than him. I'm not completely done yet, but I can see it from here. Given the magnitude of the life change, I need to know. I am setting up my Intel network, voice-activated recorder, GPS, electronic passcode, and so on. I want as close to incontrovertible proof as I can have before I pull the trigger. I've also been reading up on and taking notes on divorce laws in my state. I will be contacting lawyers as well. I have a few friends who have been recently divorced, and I will be hitting them up for any advice too. Then, I conspicuously collected some DNA samples from my 3 children to make sure that they are mine just for peace of mind. By far, the hardest thing that I've ever done. Regardless of the results, I will love them unconditionally. As for what I'm waiting for, well, I go from thinking we're done to maybe often enough that I know I have to have it break me in the face hard enough, and it hasn't yet. I also feel like I don't want to put my kids through it, even though they are older, unless it's pretty cut and dry. This is a part of me that ghoulishly enjoys hearing her on the voice-activated recorder complain about the latest development. He unfriended a lot of people in the last days or two. Yes, I snooped there too, and she's not too happy about it. And I know this isn't going to go over well, but she's been going through what I call a midlife crisis over the last year or so. She also lost her mom back in November, and we are having the funeral tomorrow. She's also taking it very hard. 2 days after her mom passed, we lost my dad. Over the next 3 weeks, she lost 2 more relatives. Then it was Christmas. My family has faced a lot of tragedy recently, and I see it's deeply affecting her. In the back of my mind, I thought maybe this is a result of those events. Perhaps I should create more space between our losses and the potential pain of divorce. I'm willing to endure it a bit longer for my kids and family. Holding out before making that decision is tough. After 26 years together, giving up isn't easy, especially considering the depth of love I've felt for her throughout most of our marriage. I can't argue with that. My plan is to spend this week checking out divorce attorneys. We have a birthday party for my daughter next Sunday, and after that, I plan to confront her. I don't know exactly what I'll say, but I'll let her know I've consulted an attorney and I'm ready to press the divorce button. While I'd love for her to have a realization moment, I won't continue the marriage after collecting evidence of her affair. On February 11th, 2022, I installed a voice-activated recorder in her car. Listening to the recording made me note the effects I'd feel and how to deal with them. Sleeplessness, use PM and melatonin, nervous energy, hit the gym, lack of appetite, knock off those extra pounds, difficulty concentrating, write everything down and recite common tasks. I forgot about night sweats until they happened, then prepared with towels and fresh clothes. Relief followed, knowing no more spying or walking on eggshells. Before I actually told her, I knew she was treating me like things were wonderful in our lives for the last few months. She was upset over receiving a box of her late mother's things from her dad to sort out. It didn't affect me. I felt no sympathy, grief, or sorrow at seeing her upset. When the confrontation finally occurred, after her prodding and pushing, "What's wrong? Tell me what's bothering you." All I did was say his name and the words, "I know." She got flustered and stormed out of the house. I don't have to worry about her anymore. I don't have to feel on edge when she's around, as if I had to act a certain way or make sure I accomplish certain tasks. As for the recent developments with her, something seemed off. We were getting along a little too well. She was almost too nice to me. Things that would normally annoy her suddenly didn't. At first I thought she was finally happy, but eventually it nagged at me, and I decided to become the marriage police. I installed a voice-activated recorder on her car and got the GPS in there. Again. I went fishing and I caught something on my first cast. The recording contained 2 phone calls. The first was of him as she was driving out to meet him. They ended up in a church parking lot, really for about 40 minutes. She went to his car, so I was spared having to listen to that. The next call was to her sounding board friend who lives halfway across the country. If the call to him wasn't enough, and I have no doubt I could have found wiggle room in that if I really wanted to keep my blinders on, then the call to her sealed the deal. The conversation that eventually happened between us was a familiar story here, primarily gaslighting and blame shifting. Apparently, her affair was my fault because she resents things she never got to do in her life. She didn't go to college or have a wild single life before we got married, and of course it's my fault and she resented me for it. I told her I refused to accept her idea that her affair was my fault, and I had told her a while ago that if she wanted out, then let's end it, and she chose to stay. So no, this is all about her. I will accept some responsibility for not being the perfect husband, but I certainly wasn't married to the perfect wife. I certainly didn't deserve this. So I'm calling a few divorce friends for attorney recommendations and any strategic advice that they might have. I am finally ready to end it. I have finally learned my lesson. My wayward wife has shown she doesn't deserve what it takes to reconcile, and I don't want to sign up for another affair in a few months or years. So I'm joining the divorce side. Is there any secret handshake or something I should learn? I am still in the whirlwind of emotion. I break a wall, but luckily, neither the wall nor I got hurt. I yelled, "Forget her!" loudly in my house. Thankfully, no one else was home, so when my best friend called to check on me, I broke down sobbing. I daydream about a magical reconciliation for her. Would it be so bad if we stayed together? Maybe if I tried a little harder, she'd be happy. But my head knows this is nonsense, and getting a divorce is the right move. I've said it to my mom, my friends, and myself many times in the last couple of days since D-Day. We've mostly avoided each other, and I really miss her. We used to text during the day, share our work experiences, and have random hugs and kisses at home. All of that has stopped, and, as I mentioned, we stay away from each other in the house. Now, she sleeps on the couch instead of the bed. One of my simple pleasures in the morning was gently waking her up when our alarm went off by rolling over, rubbing her back or arm and whispering, "Hey honey, it's that time," which was always followed by an almost inaudible response that always brought a smile to my face. She hasn't left yet. We haven't split yet, but I know what I have to do. I just know it won't be easy. Can you please tell me there is light at the end of this long, dark, lonely tunnel? Our children had the opportunity to travel and do some pretty cool things with their involvement in this cool musical group. She's jealous and has expressed it because she never got to do any of that. Newsflash, neither did I. I'm not jealous, but I'm happy that my kids have more than I did. I've spent the last 20 years in a fairly popular local band, playing at some pretty nice events. She's jealous of those opportunities, though. She dismisses the hours of practice and study it took to get in a place to be able to do this thing. Although I can tell you how many times she shared stories with me of people she met at work who heard us or followed us. It's like she feels like a big deal because she's married to one of the members. She even had to talk to someone in the doctor's office after overhearing them talking about the gig we were doing that night. She complained that I left her alone with the kids when I went out to play. Well, I was working and I came home with money in my pocket. I did have fun. Yes, playing music in front of people is exhilarating. Shifting gears, dealing with bar owners, staying on top of timing and crowd reaction. At work, though, getting up at 5 a.m., working a full day, then gigging and not getting home until 2 a.m. made for a long day. Also not fun, but we needed the money because of the house she wanted to build. Leaving the group was simply not an option. She worked too, but I earned almost as much just gigging as she did at her regular job, which also made her upset, and my real job paid 3 to 4 times hers. So I worked hard to give my family the life I thought they deserved, and what I got was resentment. The old saying that when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time is indeed true. It took me too long to see who I married. I came to the same conclusion. If we stay together, I am signing up for not being around. I've gotten a couple of attorney references and will be setting up appointments soon. I just don't see a path that doesn't end in divorce. There's really nothing left to work with. The funny thing is, people who know her outside of the home think she's a wonderful person, warm, caring, and a terrific mom. Someone who goes above and beyond to help others. And she does all that. But inside the house, it's a different story. She's definitely suffered from what I call the poor me syndrome. He's a coworker married to another coworker. I haven't told her family. All she has left is her dad and his sister. I don't really talk to them much, but I might tell him at least at some point. I've reached out to the other betrayed spouse, but she hasn't responded. I'll send another email in a couple of days with details and then leave her alone if I don't hear anything back. So tonight, I told her I want a divorce. She wanted a hug and to cry, but those times are over. She understood. We talked wistfully about how we wish things were different. I asked her, "Didn't you realize that this was going to happen when you were doing it?" She did, but she's still very upset. I feel bad. I still love this woman, but I can't be with her anymore. I don't want to do this, but I have to. A few years down the road, I'll feel better knowing I'm free. The band is on hiatus at the moment, but I have a few irons in the fire to keep me playing. We play classic rock with horns, Chicago, etc. I play trumpet. I have my sights set on that day. I know I'm starting down a rough road, but I'm confident I'll come out in good shape. She left a door open for counseling, but I shut it down, although I urged her to get counseling anyway. The only thing I can blame myself for right now is not ending things earlier. I've done nothing else wrong in the last few years, On the contrary, I've tried to be the model husband and make her the most important thing in my life. And yet, here I am again. I keep wanting to keep my marriage, but then I remember why I can't. It's a sad thing, really, and as much as anything else, it shows me that I'm ready to let go. I reached out to the other betrayed spouse via email, but got no response. So at the advice from a different thread, I called her and broke it to her. I've never felt like such a mess in my life. I know I didn't do anything but tell her what she needed to know, yet she was heartbroken, and I felt responsible. It was like finding out all over again. I broke the poor woman's heart. I know I didn't, but she thanked me. That wasn't easy to do. We talked more, and I'll guide her to this site for support. It helped me greatly. I also told her that even though we've never met, I'll be there for her. She can call or text me anytime. She was helpful to me, comparing notes and making sense of the situation. Just got off the phone with her. I feel much better about telling her now. She thanked me, and I feel I did the right thing, even though it was hard. We chatted more, and I'll direct her to this site for support. It's been a great help for me. I assured her I'm here for her, even though we haven't met. She can call or text me anytime. She was helpful to me too, comparing notes and making sense of the situation. Just finished a phone call with her, and I feel better about opening up. She thanked me, and I believe I did the right thing. It was tough, but I wanted to hear about his behavior. He seemed to create a story of an unhappy marriage to gain sympathy. I'm not ignoring her role, but she might have been manipulated with things she wanted to hear. My wife is unaware I exposed the affair partner, affecting 2 families and 6 children. Looking at a parent and wondering how they could do that is tough. Just have her compare paychecks. That's what's been happening. I only talk to her about kids or household matters. I mostly avoid being in the same room as her. The house is cold, and she's slowly realizing she's gone too far. I'm calling lawyers, gathering friends for support, and making plans to leave. I don't think she's quite out of her daze yet. I'm distancing myself as much as I can. We only talk if she initiates, and it's about the house, kids, or money. Trust me, she's starting to get it. She might expect me to act like nothing happened or to do the pick-me dance. In the past, that's what happened. I didn't really stand up to her and assert my demands to stay together. I was content to let it slide with a few apologies and a bit of excess. Now I'm doing my best at the 180, minimizing communication to essential matters. No chit-chat, no asking how you're doing or telling me about your day. None of that. I think she's having a hard time with my hands-off approach. She's incapable of accepting blame for her actions, choosing to play the sufferer. It's a bit sad. She doesn't realize why I share blame for problems in the marriage. This falls entirely on her shoulders. I know the why may never be answered, but the questions will always remain. Tonight was good. We went to my youngest daughter's high school musical. It was fun, but my wife sat next to my mom, who doesn't know she knows. The other betrayed spouse texted me during the show. Memories haunt me, and every time I wishfully hope we can stay together, I think about how I would just be here again in a few months. I'm more and more resolved on divorce. I know it sounds silly at this point. It should be absolutely unquestionable, and the only way forward at this point. But I still reflect on our life and family, wishing we could fix everything and move on. But those moments are just moments. I guess it's part of the process because they only last for moments. And then the reality that she's not worth staying with reasserts itself. I think that's progress, as the question has been asked here so many times. Why? What has caused this seemingly normal person, brought up in a very Christian home and proud of her Christianity, to do something so utterly abhorrent to the very idea and moral boundaries she learned from her earliest childhood? Why? The big finale happened tonight. I tracked her to the parking lot, where her car sat for a while, then went to a store and returned to the lot. As she sat there, I wondered what the hell was going on. I figured she was with him, so I went to check it out. Sure enough, there was her car with his right next to it. I called his wife. We've been talking for a few days, and she suggested I go say hi and grab a picture, so I did. I told her not to come home tonight. Heading home afterward, she called me in tears saying she's sorry. I agreed to let her come and grab her things so she can be gone for a bit. So now all questions are answered, and the story has been written onto the next phase of this little journey. But not so fast. The DNA results of my 3 children have been sitting in the storage where we store our mail for everyone to collect. I had already forgotten about it. It's been sitting there for a couple of weeks. I don't receive a lot of paper mail, which is why I forgot. Maybe because I didn't care to check because I thought they were all mine. But unfortunately, my first son isn't mine. I was so shocked to my core. I didn't expect that she must have been cheating on me during the first years of our marriage. My heart is shattered into different pieces, and I know I have to break the sad news to my children. I'm not going to hide secrets from my children. So I told my son last night. Lots of hugging, lots of crying. My soon-to-be ex-wife was still out of the house since I caught her having an affair with the partner in his car. He's not my biological son, but I have raised him, so he is mine. He's 20 and a man that every father would be proud of. He's not ready to confront his mom. I called my soon-to-be ex-wife on her phone and told her about it. All she did was cry and apologize. She said she wanted to come home, but I told her that it would be a good idea for her to remain wherever she is for the foreseeable future. Truth be told, I feel pretty good. DNA or not, he's still my son. I've never been this close to my kids, and I tell them I love them every day. I'm more relaxed now, and it's over. No more lying, no more worrying. My kids and I are still recovering, but we are at peace. In the coming days, we'll go through emotions, but I see a clear path out of this now.
In the heart of Tuscany, nestled in a quaint village, stood the picturesque home of Luca and Elena, seemingly the perfect couple. Celebrating their 25th anniversary, their bond appeared unbreakable. However, subtle changes in Elena's behavior stirred Luca's suspicions. One evening, he discovered messages revealing her affair with Victor and Isabel, a couple they met at an art exhibition. Shocked and heartbroken, Luca confronted Elena, leading to a heated argument filled with confessions of loneliness and forbidden desires. Seeking solace, Luca retreated to a family cabin in the Swiss Alps, reflecting on their past and his role in their marriage. Therapy and support from friends helped Luca understand the deeper issues and navigate his emotions. Eventually, Luca and Elena reached a crossroads, deciding whether to rebuild or part ways. Luca chose to move on independently, beginning his healing journey. His story highlights the importance of communication, understanding, and resilience in the face of betrayal, offering hope and new beginnings. Hello, my friends. I hope all you are fine. This is Narrative Stories channel. Let's start this story. In the heart of Tuscany, nestled in a quaint village, stood the picturesque home of Luca and Elena. Their residence, adorned with climbing ivy and surrounded by vibrant gardens, mirrored the seemingly perfect life they had built together. As the sun set, casting a golden hue over their 25th anniversary celebration, friends and family gathered to honor their enduring love. Luca, a successful architect, was known for his unwavering dedication to both his family and his work. His designs, much like his life, were meticulously crafted, each detail thoughtfully considered. Elena, on the other hand, was a beloved local artist, admired for her creativity and charm. Her vibrant paintings captured the essence of the Tuscan landscape, much like her spirit captured the hearts of those around her. Together, they were the epitome of a loving couple, their bond seemingly unbreakable. Yet, beneath the surface of this idyllic facade, a storm was brewing, one that would soon shatter the illusion of their perfect life. The discovery of an unthinkable betrayal was on the horizon, threatening to upend everything Luca had ever known and cherished. Luca's suspicion began to stir when subtle changes in Elena's behavior became apparent. Her frequent late nights at the studio, the whispered phone calls, and a growing sense of distance set alarm bells ringing in his mind. Despite his best efforts to quell his doubts, the seed of suspicion had been planted. One fateful evening, as Elena was out, Luca's curiosity got the better of him. He picked up her phone, a device he had never felt the need to scrutinize before, and his world came crashing down. A series of messages revealed an affair, not with one person, but with a couple, Victor and Isabel, whom they had met at an art exhibition. The betrayal hit him like a physical blow, his heart pounding in his chest as he read the intimate exchanges. Disbelief turned into a whirlwind of emotions, anger, heartbreak, and a profound sense of betrayal. The foundation of their 25-year marriage, built on trust and love, seemed to crumble before his eyes, leaving him in a state of shock and despair. Unable to contain his turmoil, Luca confronted Elena that very night. The heated argument that ensued was filled with accusations, tears, and raw confessions. Elena, caught off guard, could not deny the affair. She spoke of loneliness, the thrill of the forbidden, and a desire to feel alive in ways she hadn't in years. Her words cut deep, each revelation a dagger to Luca's heart. As emotions ran high, Luca experienced a roller coaster of feelings: anger at the betrayal, heartbreak over the lost trust, and confusion about their future. The image of their happy marriage lay in tatters, replaced by the stark reality of infidelity. Elena's explanations did little to soothe the pain, but they offered a glimpse into the emotional void she had been trying to fill. Luca's world was turned upside down, and he found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about their relationship. The confrontation marked the beginning of a painful journey, one that would test his resilience and force him to reevaluate his life and identity. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Luca felt an overwhelming need for solitude. He retreated to a family cabin in the Swiss Alps, seeking refuge from the chaos that had engulfed his life. Amidst the serene beauty of the mountains, he began to process his emotions and reflect on his life. Memories of their courtship, marriage, and family life flooded his mind. Recollections of the good times and the gradual distance that had developed between them. Each flashback was a bittersweet reminder of what they had shared and what had been lost. As so Luca embarked on a journey of self-discovery. He questioned his role in the marriage, wondering if he had missed signs or contributed to the growing void Elena had felt. This introspection was both painful and enlightening, revealing facets of his personality and their relationship that he had previously overlooked. The solitude allowed him to confront his pain, but also to gain a deeper understanding of himself and the complexities emotions. Realizing that he couldn't navigate this emotional labyrinth alone, Luca decided to seek therapy. Both individually and with Alana, he delved into the deeper issues in their relationship. Counseling sessions became space for learning painful truths. Through therapy, Luca began to understand dynamics that had led to the betrayal. He also sought support from close friends like Matteo and Sofia, who offered different perspectives and unwavering support. Conversations with them provided a sense of solace. He was not alone in his journey. Each discussion brought new insights, helping Luca piece together the fragments of his shattered world. The quest for understanding was arduous, but it was also a path to healing. It allowed Luca to confront his emotions head-on and to slowly rebuild his sense of self. The support of and professional guidance, linking his anger, helping him navigate the turbulent waters of betrayal and loss. After months of soul-searching therapy, Luca and Elena reached the crossroads. They had to decide whether to rebuild marriage or part ways. The decision weighed heavily on Luca's heart as he grappled with the desire for reconciliation and the fear of further betrayal. An unexpected encounter with Victor and Isabel provided a pivotal moment of clarity. Meeting them face to face allowed Luca to gain closure and further insight into the complex affair. He realized that the path forward, whether together or apart, needed to be based on mutual understanding and respect. This encounter, though painful, helped him see the affair not just as a betrayal, but as a symptom of deeper issues that needed addressing. Luca and Elena's conversations became more focused on their individual needs and future aspirations. They acknowledged the love they still had for each other, but also recognized were necessary for a healthier relationship. In the end, Luca made a decision about his future. He chose to move on independently, realizing that the wounds of betrayal were too deep to heal within the marriage. This decision marked the beginning of his healing process, a journey towards peace and direction in his life. With the support of friends and the clarity gained from therapy, Luca started to rebuild his life. He immersed himself in his work, finding solace in his architectural projects. Slowly, the pain of betrayal began to fade, replaced by a sense of resilience and newfound strength. The story concluded with a reflection on the power of forgiveness, not just towards Elena, but also towards himself. Luca's journey is a testament to the human spirit's ability to overcome adversity and find hope in new beginnings. His story served as a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable pain, there is always the possibility of healing and moving forward. Luca's journey from the genre of betrayal to the path of healing offered profound lessons about love, trust. It underscored the importance of communication, the need to address underlying issues in any relationship. His story was a poignant reminder that life's challenges, though painful, can lead to personal beginnings. As Luca found peace and a renewed sense of purpose, he encouraged others to revel in their own relationships and the importance of understanding and forgiveness. The narrative wrapped up with a call to action, urging viewers to cherish their loved ones and to never shy away from seeking help when needed.
Luca's experience, though deeply personal, resonated with universal themes of love and law, offering a beacon of hope to those facing struggles. His story was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the endless possibilities that lie ahead, even after the darkest of times. Thank you for being a part of Narrative Stories. Your support and engagement mean the world to us. We are committed to bringing you the best in storytelling. What kinds of stories would you like next? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
She was interested in trying swinging. What was I supposed to do? I'm Ben Collier, 36, an only child. At the start of this story, I'd been married to Emma, formerly Foster, for 11 years. Emma, with her striking red hair, vibrant green eyes, and radiant smile, had always turned heads. We'd both agreed not to have kids. I had no desire to carry on my family line after enduring years of emotional abuse growing up, where my parents' nickname for me was Stupid Mistake. For Emma, the decision was about her career and a concern that having children would change her figure. One weekend morning, while I was wrapping up my coffee and mentally sorting through my list of weekend chores, Emma joined me at the table, something she didn't often do. She looked at me and said, "Ben, I want us to try sex with another couple. You're an amazing husband, but I think there might be something about it that we could enjoy together." I was just dumbfounded and finished my coffee, put the cup in the sink, and walked out of the kitchen and into the master bedroom. Emma followed and said, "Aren't you going to say anything?" "Yes, I am going to say something. Enjoy the rest of your life. I will pack all of your crap and put it on the porch. Take it to whoever put that crap in your mind. The next time we talk will be across the table with a divorce attorney." "What do you mean?" she screamed. "I don't want a divorce. I am not moving out. I am talking about taking a lover, not cheating on you." "Lady, you made 4 statements there, and you were wrong on at least 3 of them. You must want a divorce. I no longer am enough. You are moving out. My a-hole parents left me this house and most of the furniture. You have no claim to it. Don't forget the prenup your loving parents insisted on. As for talking about taking someone else as a sex partner, we did not talk. You made a statement. Also, as far as I am concerned, even though you told me, probably before you did it, planning sex with someone else is cheating. Our marriage vows, not suggestions," vows said, forsaking all others. I was on a roll now. If we were having problems in the bedroom, why am I just now finding out about them? After 11 years, I realized you were not a screamer, but you never asked me to try something different. Did you? She hung her head and stated, "No, I never said anything." "Then this conversation is over. Now either help me pack or get out of here. You need to find somewhere to stay after this weekend, because come Monday you don't live here anymore. Tonight you will sleep in one of the other bedrooms. One more thing. Was I going to be privileged to know who you were going to cheat with?" "I had not decided," she said. "What?" I screamed. "Is there a whole list? And how many have you already taken to bed?" Emma started crying and tried to say something. I just went up to her, turned her around, and led her out of the bedroom. Then I closed the door. We met in high school. I was not what you would call a jock, nor was I a geek. I was, however, an athlete. I ran cross-country and track. Our team was city champion in cross-country, and I was an all-state track member in the mile and half-a-mile runs and the 1-mile relay. We had a great program, and were city champs every year I ran. Emma Foster was a shy girl and transferred into the district her junior year. We met in an unusual way. I was a senior, and coming out of a pre-college counseling meeting when I saw Emma was being cornered by a couple of the resident bullies that almost every school has. I hollered at them to back off, and when they turned to tell me to mind my own business, Emma scooted away. That left me to just laugh at the bullies and say, "Sure, guys, but what are you going to do now that you have no one to bully?" They turned around and found an empty wall staring at them. I just walked away. At lunch, that day Emma, I found out her name from a friend of mine in her homeroom, came up to my table and totally surprised me by screaming, "Mind your own business, a-hole. I don't need anyone's help. Just leave me alone." "Okay," I said quietly. "I am sorry you did not get to experience those two jerks' attention. Just ask around about them. I will not interfere again. Are you happy now? If you are, get your face out of my face, and let me enjoy my lunch while I deal with people who have some manners." I know, I was a jerk, but she pissed me off. Emma looked at me like I had 3 eyes and ran out of the lunchroom crying. I finished my lunch and went to my next class. I did not see her for the rest of the day, and just went to practice and afterward went home. My parents were their usual jerky selves, but told me that there was going to be some guests for dinner. You guessed it. Emma and her parents showed up and introductions were made. I shook her parents' hands and told my parents that I would be in my room until the company left. I was still pissed about lunch. My mother was mad, my dad was mad, and our guests, except for Emma, were confused. I just said to everyone, "If you need to know why I will not stay here with you all, ask Emma about school today, and especially about her encounter with the school's resident scumbags this morning." I left, went to my room, and locked the door. That was our first encounter. 18 years later, I wished it could have been the last. Emma spent almost the entire school year trying to apologize, but I wanted nothing to do with it. Toward the end of April, I saw the same bullies had Emma backed up in a corner again, and as I went by, I saw fear in her eyes. I thought, for just a millisecond, that's what you deserve. But I could not just escape the pleading in her eyes that I saw. I just wasn't raised that way. I set my books down and tapped the nearest jerk on the shoulder and asked if this was a private discussion or could I sort of even the odds. I saw the punch coming, and when I ducked, then another scumsucker hit me in the back of the head and I was down for the count. I woke up in the school nurse's office and was told to lay still until the ambulance arrived. I asked what happened, and the nurse said, "A girl ran to the admin office screaming that you were being stomped on by 4 guys in the hall around the corner from the gym. When the hall monitors and principal arrived, all 4 of the guys were still kicking and stomping on you. They were pulled off of you and taken away when the police arrived." I asked what was wrong with me, and she said, "I'm not sure of all of it, but you have a fracture of your cheekbone, a possible broken rib or ribs, and possible internal injuries. Just lay still until the ambulance gets here." That was the last I remembered until I woke up in the hospital. Emma and her parents showed up the next day at visiting hours, and the first thing Emma said was, "Why did you help me again after I acted as I did before? And then you would not even let me apologize all year." I just stared at her for a second and said, "I do not know where you came from, but here most of us do not like bullies. Regardless of what you said to me, I could not let those scumbags do to you what they have done in the past to others." I only thought for a split second to not help. I definitely didn't know about the other 2 guys, or that I would be knocked out with the first punch. If I had known that, I might have thought longer, but it would not have made a difference. My parents are bullies, and I can't stand bullies. As to your apologies, I neither want nor need them. I just want you to leave me alone. The first time those same 2 jerks were bothering you, you screamed at me in front of the entire cafeteria to leave you alone. I did, but you didn't. Then when I tried to help again, I got the crap kicked out of me. Just leave me alone." Emma started crying, and her parents insisted that she explain about the first incident. As I was a captive audience, I finally heard what was happening. One of the scumbags, Jerry Cooper, told Emma he was going to pick her up for a date that coming Friday, and Emma, not liking his attitude, told him in not-so-polite words to buzz off. Jerry, along with one of his football posse, cornered her and said, "You're going out with me, be ready at 7 o'clock. That was when I interrupted the party the first time. The second time was more of the same, but they said they were waiting for her boyfriend to show up to show her what would happen if she said no. Emma explained to her parents that she was so scared of the 2 boys and so embarrassed by needing my help that she got mad and took it out on me. Her mother said something about how that must have gotten all over the school. Emma said, "Nope, Sir Knight here never said a word to anyone about it, and when people asked me I just said it was personal." Emma's mother was speechless, but not her father. He verbally laid into her for about 5 minutes before security tossed the whole bunch out. I was visited by several of my classmates. One, Thomas Miller brought his father with him, and the father informed me he was an attorney and offered to represent me in any lawsuits I wanted to file. He also told me that all 4 of the bullies were from rich families and had started a suit against the school for expelling their loving children. The security tapes in Emma's account put a quick stop to that. He then told me that the families had made a major mistake because if they had just let it go, I would only be able to sue the guys involved because of their adult, over 18, status. I asked what it would cost me to sue all the families, the school, and the school district. He stated that he needed $10 and 20% plus expenses of whatever we got. He also said that he had heard of my home life and recommended that I file for early graduation and emancipation to act on my own behalf. I agreed, and he said he would bring the papers ASAP. He said he would do the emancipation first, so I could sign the legal papers. The emancipation was over quickly as the judge was familiar with my situation, and because I was almost 18 myself, it was just a matter of a few months. Mr. Miller had me sign the papers and said that I was being sued for unprovoked violence against Mr. Cooper. At all? I laughed and Mr. Miller chuckled. He said that he had secured the security tapes of the attack and that somehow all of the other copies at the school had been misplaced. He also had the school disciplinary and police records of the guys. The suit was going nowhere. He also said that this suit was a preemptive strike against me suing them. I told him to sue each family individually for $10,000 a day for every day I am in the hospital, out of school, or under a doctor's care, and a flat $2 million for pain and suffering. Mr. Miller laughed and said, I will, and I will add that they will also pay me all of my fees, on top of what you get. I then said, sue the school officials for the failure of their duty to provide a safe environment, and the school board for the same thing. Oh, let's say $10 million. We will settle all of the suits for all you can squeeze out of all of them. I added, sue the guys for $10 million each against future earnings and settle that one for all of them pleading guilty to any charges brought against them, and after completing their punishment, permanently removing them from the state and no return for even funerals or weddings without my approval. We shook hands, signed more papers, and Mr. Miller left. A couple of days later, the school district sent several lawyers in to have me sign something. They were extremely angry when I said that I would not sign anything without my attorney's okay. I then told them to go through him before showing up again, or I would have them barred from my room. I also informed them that they could not go through my parents as I was an emancipated minor, and they could no longer sign for me. Mr. Miller called later that same day and said the school system's attorneys had talked to him and offered all medical expenses, $1 million plus 5% legal fees. I told him to accept medical, $4,500,000 and 30% legal fees, and I will release to them a copy of the security tape. He laughed and said I was one evil, vengeful scumsucker. I giggled. I couldn't laugh. It made my ribs hurt, and said, nope, my parents are married. I'm just not sure who to, or who my father is. Later that day they accepted, but required a non-disclosure. I signed the next day. Non-disclosure was not a problem. In fact, I would have insisted on it if I had thought of it. As an added bonus, they presented me with my diploma as I had met all of the graduation requirements. The 4 families offered combined medical, $5,000 per day in the hospital, and or missed school until my class graduates plus $700,000 no legal expenses. I told Mr. Miller to counter. All medical for my entire life for any and all complications from the injuries split between the 4 families. Then each family will pay $8,000 per day until I was released from current medical care, $1,250,000 for pain and suffering, and 30% of the total amount of the settlement for legal expenses. For that, they would also get a copy of the missing security tape. I also said non-disclosure was to my advantage, so it would not be a deal-breaker, but make it apply to all parties. Mr. Miller laughed and said, that ought to work. I still wonder about your birth parents' marital status, but I like your style. He said goodbye and hung up the phone. A couple of days later, Mr. Miller came in with some papers and said that families had accepted the deal. I signed the non-disclosure and had Mr. Miller find me a good CPA to take care of the money. A lot of the money was invested in local income properties. The 4 thugs signed the agreement with the stipulation that I drop all of the charges and lawsuits I filed. I agreed, but after I signed, I laughed and told them that I had not filed any charges. The school and the local DA did. They were pissed and made several threats. Mr. Miller told them that he had recorded their threats and would file on those threats if the pleas to the charges were not made. He also told them that he knew they or their families had taken the security tapes and records, but we had gotten copies before they did it and would produce them at their trials if they did not fully comply with the agreements. They all pled guilty and got 1 year in the county jail. I agreed with the punishment, and they left the state, and I never heard from them again. I got out of the hospital about 5 weeks later, and my dad informed me that he was suing the school system, the four guys' parents, and anyone else they could. After getting over the surprise, I just laughed. My dad asked what I was laughing about. I said, "Go ahead and sue, but you're wasting the money." I continued, "I am an emancipated minor, so you can't sue, but I can and did. I have an attorney and he informed me that the four guys are all over 18, expelled from school and not their parents' responsibilities. The school has offered and I accepted a settlement, and I have it in a trust fund that I will get an allowance from until I am 25 when I can get it all, as I am emancipated. If you let me stay here and eat here, I will pay you $350 per month. Otherwise, I am moving out." He screamed, "You ungrateful scumsucker. We deserve something. You caused us a lot of pain. Just pack up your shit and get out." I left later that day. I went to a motel and paid with a debit card my CPA gave me. I found an apartment and moved in until my 18th birthday. I then decided to enlist in the Air Force. I served 2.5 years and was mustered out when my facial injuries required more surgery. The military did the surgery, but I had a severe vision problem in that eye. They gave me an 80% disability and a medical discharge. When I got home, I was informed that my parents had been killed in a single-car accident and that I was the sole beneficiary of their estate as they had not designated any heir, nor had they disowned me. There was a $150,000 insurance policy on my dad and a $75,000 one on my mom. The policies both had a double indemnity clause. I also got my mom's car and the house. About 6 months later, I literally bumped into Emma again. I had gotten surgery on my eye from one of the best eye doctors in the country and was now going to sign up for the local state college. As I was entering the administration building, Emma was coming out. She had one arm full of books and one arm on the door push bar when without looking I pulled it open. She spilled out of the door. I caught her, but her books were all over the ground. She started to get all angry but deflated when she looked and recognized me. She shouted, "Davy, I didn't know you were back." I apologized for messing her books up and proceeded to pick them up for her. She wanted to get together to catch up and asked me to meet her at a local lounge/bar that evening. I agreed. When I got there, Emma was not there yet, so I ordered a burger and a 7-Up. I quit drinking after getting a vicious headache brought on by my injuries and waited for her. She arrived about 10 minutes late and never apologized for it. She ordered her drink and said she had already eaten, but for me to go ahead. As I was eating, Emma filled me in on all that I had missed while I was away. It seems that 2 of Mr. Cooper's friends that attacked me were arrested a couple of states over for murder, and no one had heard anything about the other 2. She told me all about her boyfriends, her breakups, and all of the gossip that I could care less about. After she wound down, she asked about me. I told her about my parents, my military experience, my eye problem and fix, and that while I had a job, that I had enrolled in college and was starting after the next semester. We talked for about an hour, and she said she had to go because she had an early class. She told me how sorry she was about my parents and left. I never asked for her phone number and never gave her mine. So I was blown away when about 3 weeks later she called me in the evening. I asked how she had gotten my number, and she just laughed and said you never changed it when you took over the house. She wanted to know if I liked live theater when I said yes. She invited me to a play that weekend. I agreed, but only if she let me buy dinner. We agreed. The play was fun, and I got her phone number. We dated regularly, and for me exclusively, for about 6 months, with no sex. Then she wanted to take a break. I was pissed but chalked it up to the unknown feminine mind. I did not hear from her for several months. When she called me again, I told her I was in a semi-serious friend with benefits relationship and was still P.O.D. about her break. I was polite but firm and asked her not to call again. I said if my relationship ended, I would call her if I wanted to get back together. She hung up on me. My friends with benefits lady fell in love with someone and left the city with him. I enjoyed her company, her conversation, and the sex was great. But there was very little emotional attachment. I dated several ladies and continued through another year of school. I did not call Emma. I saw her several times throughout the school year and around the town on the weekends. She always seemed to be with a different guy. When I returned to the campus the next semester, I heard through the grapevine that one of the professors had been fired for having sex with Emma. I also heard that Emma had transferred to another school. Semester break corresponded with Christmas. I was surprised when Emma called me at my house. It had been quite a while since she had given me the "I need a break" message. I had gotten past the hurt and anger. We talked for a long time, and I finally asked her if she wanted to meet for coffee sometime during school break. She mentioned a small on-campus coffee house at 10 o'clock the next morning. I said okay and goodbye. I was there at 9:50 and got a coffee and a seat by the window. I watched as Emma pulled into the parking lot a couple of minutes later. It was before 10 o'clock, but she sat in her car until 10:10. Then she walked in and saw me. She smiled, ordered her drink, and walked over and sat down. She never apologized for being late and did not seem to notice that I was steamed. I finished my coffee, paid my bill, told Emma that she should call me again when she decided to stop playing games. I told her I noticed when she pulled in the lot and that I had better things to do than wait for someone who has to make an entrance. I left. Emma called me later that afternoon and apologized. She said she had forgotten about how I felt about punctuality. She asked if we could try again. In a fit of total stupidity, I said let's try coffee, same time, same place. She said okay. When I got there, she was sitting where I had been the day before. I got my coffee and sat down next to her. I said hi and asked how she was doing. After the usual personal talk, I asked how she was doing at her new school. Emma got a shocked look and asked how I knew about that. When I told her that the firing of the professor and that she had transferred, she just looked down at her coffee and said, "Not my finest moment," she continued. "I was stupid, childish, and selfish. I thought that he would be a help to me in school. After his wife and another professor caught us, I found out that he had a different co-ed almost every school year. I was just the latest bimbo." I didn't say much, just reached out and patted the back of the hand she had on the table. She smiled. I said that if she wanted to, perhaps we could go to a movie or to dinner during the break. She got a big smile and said, "How about this weekend?" We swapped cell phone numbers and agreed to talk later in the week. We went out that weekend, and it was like nothing had changed between us. We continued going out when the school allowed. After I graduated and started a new job in my hometown, I was hired as a dispatch supervisor for a local package delivery company. Emma ended up back in town also, so we started dating seriously again. After 6 months, I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. That is when the prenup came into the mix. Emma knew I had some money, but her parents did not. Emma had a small trust fund from a grandfather. Her father insisted on a prenup to protect Emma's money. I talked to Mr. Miller, and he said don't sign anything until he looks at it. I told him about Emma knowing I had some money, but not how much. I also said that Emma's parents did not know anything about my wealth. I wanted the same or better protection than Emma if I were to sign any prenup. Mr. Foster was very fair, and the proposed prenup protected everything that was an individual property or possession. Any assets that we accumulated together would be home, and a weepy Emma answered. I told her I had taken a few days off and was going to a motel to do some thinking. I also told her that I was extremely hurt and very angry right now, and that I did not think that with how things had been going in our marriage that it would survive. I asked her to go somewhere for a few hours so I could come to the house and get some clothes. I told her I was not going to an attorney yet, but I was going to try to figure out if we could get over this. She cried some more and said, "Okay, I will go to visit my mother for a couple of hours." We said our goodbyes, and I went to a local motel and booked a room for a couple of nights. I went home, and after taking enough clothes to last for 3 days, I decided to write Emma a letter to give her enough information to understand where I stand. After sitting at the computer, I composed a brief letter to let her know that things, as I saw them, were broke. Dear Emma, you told me Saturday that I was a great husband. I do not believe you really feel that way. Let me tell you why I say that. If I am such a great husband, why have you been going out with your coworkers every week? But every time I ask to take you out to dinner, you're too tired, don't feel good, or don't want to. If I am such a great husband, how come you have not tried to initiate making love for over 8 months? And when I try, you are too tired, don't feel good, or don't want to, or give me a mercy sex. If I am such a great husband, why have you started picking fights over some of the silliest things? Things like me mowing the lawn, not mowing the lawn, taking the garbage out, not taking the garbage out? You even tried to start an argument about me not emptying the dishwasher without even looking in it. I had emptied the clean and loaded it with dirty dishes, and all you did was look embarrassed. Yet you did not apologize and just left the room. These are just a few of the things I have seen in the last months. If you don't love me, or I am not enough for you, we can get a divorce. If that is what you want, I will agree with it. I will insist on the enforcement of the prenup, but you can have everything else we have accumulated during our marriage. If you do not want a divorce, you need to make a major attitude adjustment, because I was already to ask for at least a separation because of what you have done and how you have acted recently. I will bet that if you think about it, the coworkers that you go out with are either divorced or on their second or third marriages. I would also bet that the swinging idea was put out there by one of that group. I know you probably think that I am overreacting, but I will not willingly share with you while we are married. If I find out you have already had sex with someone, we are done. Do you understand that? Think about all of this. Ben. I put the note and my wedding ring on the coffee maker and left. I did not hear from Emma until the next afternoon. I had all kinds of thoughts going through my head. Was she checking with her friends, her lover, perhaps her parents? I finally decided that I needed honest answers and hired an investigator to check on her for the next 2 weeks. When Emma did call, we talked and I said I would return to talk the next day, but she needed to sleep in the guest bedroom or leave because until I was over my hurt, I did not want to have her touch me. She cried and said, "Okay, I will see you tomorrow night." Well, when I got back to my house, Emma was not in sight, and when I went in the bedroom, all of her clothes were out of the closets and her dresser drawers were empty. Whether they were in the guest bedroom or out of the house entirely, I did not know, and I was not going to go look. Emma came out of the guest room and asked if I was hungry. She acted like she had not even read the note. I did not make any comment about her attitude, but I just said, "I didn't come here to eat. I want answers. The need for you to leave will depend on those answers. Remember, you can't lie to me for shit. I can always tell when you are not truthful. Are you going to answer the questions?" She looked down at the floor and mumbled something. She looked up with tears in her eyes and said, "I will go to my parents for a while." I responded. That response answers all of the questions that I had except for one or two. Who is the man you are cheating with, or is there more than one? I know that you have someone because, in 10 years of marriage, you were never like this until the last few months. Just do not tell your parents that I caused this problem, because I will talk to them and let them know what is going on. I am also going to file for a legal separation and freeze all of our credit cards and bank accounts. If you will answer all of my questions and concerns, we may be able to get through these problems. If you don't want to answer, just tell me and we can end this with a divorce. Emma just sort of slumped her shoulders and without looking at me said, "I don't know why you think I have cheated. I don't want a separation or a divorce." I gave her a curt laugh and said, "Okay, if you don't want a separation or a divorce, you had better go see a psychiatrist, find out where your shitty attitude came from. I will not put up with it. I also do not believe your denial of cheating. So give me the names of the ladies that you are with on your ladies' night out. I can't and won't stand for these accusations. So go ahead and file for your goddamn divorce, but I will rip you a new hole in the settlement." She screamed. I just shook my head and said, "Okay, I will see an attorney in the morning. I have protected my assets and yours, so all you can go after is what we have accumulated since we got married. I will make it easy. You can have it all. I have enough to get by. So the funds we have built up are yours." I then gave her my final verbal shot. "Just remember, I was willing to talk through some of our problems, but just like the last several months you have shut me out. If you can live with that, have a good life." Emma started to sob, grabbed her purse and left. That wasn't the end, of course. My phone was bombarded all the next week by calls from Emma's parents, her friends, and somehow, she even got some of my friends to call. They all asked me what I did to hurt Emma. When I tried to explain, I was almost always stopped and was told that that was not what Emma said. From her family and friends, I sort of expected that, but I told my friends to think back on all of my actions and decide if they wanted to be my friend still. I let them know that while it was none of their business, they had to decide if they believed Emma or me. I lost a lot of my friends, and when they wanted to reconnect, I had them call Emma. I got the report from the PI and found out that Emma was not staying with her parents, but with her boss in an apartment in town. That made me laugh because my trust fund owned the building. I called the building manager and got copies of all of the security tapes of the hallways and lobby. I also asked for a copy of his lease agreement. I gave all of that information and videos to my attorney. Then I got served with divorce papers and a lawsuit to void the prenup. Now that pissed me off. I called my lawyer and countersued for adultery and named her boss as correspondent. I also had my lawyer serve the boss with an eviction notice to be served at his home when his wife was home. The lease agreement was for single occupancy and guests could not stay more than 3 days without an additional fee. Emma had stayed for more than a week. Things went along for a couple of days after Emma was served. Then she called and said she was ready to talk to me. I asked if she was ready to be completely honest and to let the people who have harassed me that same truth. When she said yes, I agreed to meet her at a local coffee shop. I did say that she was not to bring her boss with her. She gasped but said okay. My lawyer did not want me to go but told me to record the entire meeting. I really did not know what to expect, so I brought copies of the investigator's report and the pictures taken from the videos from the apartment building. I did not bring the videos because they only showed the hallways. When I got there, Emma was late, but this time she apologized. "I'm sorry for being late. Something was going on in a street near work, and I had to take a very different route and got slightly lost." I waved it off, then told Emma that I was going to record this meeting, as my lawyer had told me to do. I started the recorder, gave the date, time, and location of the recording being made. I then asked Emma if she understood that I was recording the conversation. First, she just nodded, but I insisted that her verbal answer. With almost clenched teeth, she said, "I don't like it, but I understand that you are recording. You're doing this is making me angry, but you are setting the parameters." I then asked if she was going to answer all of my questions and concerns. I then said, "This is just a preliminary meeting. I do not guarantee that we will be back together after this meeting, but if I am not satisfied with the way this discussion goes, based on your honesty, candidness, and completeness, we will not get back together. Do you understand?" Emma sobbed and said, "Yes, I understand what you said. What I don't understand is why you are being such an angry a-hole." I just laughed and said, "Your actions over the last 7+ months are why. Now you said you were ready to answer all of my questions. Are you really ready?" "Yes," she said. "Okay, you said you were ready to answer all of my questions. The first question is, have you had sex with anyone other than myself since we got engaged and married?" "Before you answer, BJ, contrary to Bill Clinton's claims, is still sex." "Yes," she said. "Next question is a multi-part one. How many different people have you had sex with during that time? What are all of their names? Have you stopped?" "There have been 2, but only one since we have been married. I will not give you their names. I have stopped as of 2 days ago when my lover lost the lease on his apartment in town and had to go back to his wife. I decided to rub it in a little. So you have cheated with a cheater, is that right?" "Yes." I then zinged her with the next question. "Would your cheating with the cheater have continued if you had been able to stay in that 4th-floor apartment of your lover's?" "Yes." "And how do you know where his apartment is?" I slid a stack of 8-inch by 10-inch pictures captured from the videos. Emma let out a screech and ran out of the meeting. I did not see or hear from her or her lawyer until our first court appearance. She brought her parents, her boss, and a couple of friends. I just looked at the group and smiled. I did not say a thing. The first thing the judge asked was if all interested parties were sure the marriage was irreparably damaged. My lawyer, Mr. Miller, said yes. Emma's lawyer said no. Her lawyer then brought up the motion to vacate the prenup. The judge looked over his glasses at the attorney and said, "Both parties signed and filed the prenup. If your client wants to vacate it, may I ask why?" The lawyer gulped and said, "My client's husband has substantial assets that my client was unaware of at the time of signing. The prenup was requested by my client's family to protect her assets." The judge scowled. "Let me get this straight. Your client and her family proposed the prenup, and now that your client finds that there is premarital money on her husband's side, she wants to vacate her agreement. Is that a fair statement?" The lawyer started to sweat and gulped again. "Yes, Your Honor." Motion denied. If the divorce is granted, the prenup will be enforced. With that statement, Emma's boss got up from his seat and left the courtroom. I whispered to my lawyer, "Now I know where the attempt to overturn the prenup came from." Emma's lawyer then stood back up and said, "My client now requests marriage counseling." The judge looked to our bench. I shook my head and Mr. Miller stated, "My client feels that counseling would only prolong the pain of his spouse's betrayal and breaking of their marriage vows." He continued, "My client is willing to surrender all of the joint assets accumulated during the marriage, but feels that the evidence of an adulterous affair has caused him to just want out of the marriage and to continue on with his life." The judge popped upright in his chair. He asked, "You mentioned an affair. I hope you have evidence of that, or I may revisit my prior ruling." "We do, Your Honor, and if necessary, we are prepared to present Mrs. Bowyer's recorded admission." An admission she agreed to have recorded. Emma's lawyer jumped up. "My client did not agree to any recording. A recording was made, but my client did not agree to it." Mr. Miller stood and said, "Your Honor, we have the tape and the vocal agreement to be recorded will be heard. We are amenable to a delay while opposing counsel has an opportunity to listen to the entire tape and also see all of the video and photographic evidence of his client living with her supervisor when she left the marriage house." Emma's lawyer conferred with Emma then said, "My client withdraws all objections to the dissolution of the marriage and does not need to see the evidence. We stipulate the complainant's request is accurate." The judge looked at both desks. If both parties are in agreement, the claimant's request for dissolution is granted. The financial settlement as follows. Claimant will, as the injured party receives 90% of all assets acquired during the marriage. Claimant will be granted unrequested spousal support of $500 per month for a period of 10 years, or until he remarries. These financial settlements are imposed as punishment for the offending party's actions. I suggest that the two parties sit down and agree to a different settlement. These orders will become final in 91 days. Bowyer versus Bowyer case adjourned. Somehow I was not pleased with the judgment. It just affirmed that my marriage was a failure. The attorneys negotiated the financials, and I got a small lump sum settlement and strict enforcement of the prenup. I donated all of the lump sum to the local woman's shelter. I did not want or need it. Emma's boss was sued for divorce by his wife, and he was in a similar situation as Emma. All of the money was hers. I got what she didn't. He was fired and left town. Emma somehow kept her job. Neither one of us was at the reading of the final decree. I did not see her for over 2 years. I did keep in touch with her parents, and they remained friends. I saw Emma recently, and she seems to have lost her joy. She was kind of frumpy, no makeup, baggy clothes, and stringy hair. I did not talk to her as what she did was still a raw wound. Life is a voyage, and Emma was an unexpected detour. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Subscribe to Cheating Tales Lab for more original and exclusive stories. We hope you enjoy this one. Let's begin. Ethan Blackwood's fingers drummed an impatient rhythm on the steering wheel of his Audi R8 as he navigated the congested downtown streets. The sleek sports car, usually a source of pride, felt like a gilded cage in the stop-and-go traffic. His mind raced, consumed by the forgotten wallet that threatened to derail his $1 million proposal presentation. "Damn it," he muttered, glancing at his empty breast pocket for the 100th time. The thought of asking Victoria to bring it down to his office made him wince. He could already hear her sardonic comments about his absent-mindedness. With a sudden jerk of the wheel, Ethan cut across 2 lanes of honking traffic, ignoring the chorus of blaring horns. He'd grab the wallet himself and be back on the road in 10 minutes. No need to give Victoria more ammunition for her little jabs. As he pulled into the private parking area of his luxurious penthouse, Ethan's eyes narrowed at the unfamiliar Porsche 911 parked haphazardly nearby. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as he approached their door, an unsettling silence greeting him as he entered. "Victoria," he called out, his voice echoing in the vast open-plan living area. No response. The muffled sounds coming from the master bedroom sent a chill down his spine. Ethan's hand hesitated on the doorknob for a split second before he pushed it open. The sight that greeted him sent his world spinning off its axis. A shirtless man, tall and muscular, stood by the bed, carelessly buttoning his pants. His dark hair was mussed, his chiseled features twisted in surprise, and something that looked unsettlingly like amusement. Rage exploded in Ethan's chest. He lunged forward, grabbing the stranger by the collar. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, his voice trembling with fury. Before the man could answer, a flash of silk caught Ethan's peripheral vision. Victoria rushed out of the ensuite bathroom, cinching a robe around her waist. Her face cycled through shock, defiance, and finally settled on a look of cold detachment that chilled Ethan to his core. "Let him go, Ethan," she said, her voice steady and devoid of any guilt or shame. "This is Xavier Thornton, my new love." Ethan's grip on Xavier's collar loosened, more from shock than compliance. He stumbled back a step, his mind reeling as he tried to process the surreal scene before him. "What was I to you for 13 years, Victoria?" The words tumbled out before he could stop them, raw and vulnerable. Victoria's lips curled into a cruel smile that Ethan had never seen before. It transformed her beautiful face into something alien and malevolent. "A tool, Ethan," she replied, her voice dripping with disdain. "Just a surviving tool. Xavier here is everything you're not, passionate, spontaneous, and exciting." Each word was a dagger, precisely aimed to inflict maximum pain. Ethan felt his chest constrict, struggling to draw breath as the full weight of her betrayal crashed down upon him. Fury coursing through his veins, Ethan ordered them both out of his house. As Victoria gathered her things, she hissed, "I'll make sure you regret this decision, Ethan. You have no idea what I'm capable of." The threat hung in the air as Victoria and Xavier left, the sound of the Porsche's engine fading into the distance. Ethan stood alone in the bedroom, his world shattered around him. The following days passed in a blur for Ethan. He moved through the prestigious architecture firm like a ghost, going through the motions but feeling utterly disconnected. Every sympathetic glance, every hushed conversation that stopped abruptly when he entered a room, felt like salt in his still raw wounds. It was during a particularly grueling meeting that Marcus Steele, Ethan's colleague and best friend at the firm, finally confronted him. As the other partners filed out of the conference room, Marcus hung back, concern etched deep in the lines of his face. "Ethan, what's going on with you, man?" Marcus asked, his voice low and urgent. "You've been off your game all week. That proposal you presented just now, it's not up to your usual standards. Talk to me." Ethan looked up at his friend, seeing the genuine worry in his eyes. The weight of his secret was crushing him, and Marcus's concern finally cracked his resolve. "It's Victoria," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. She's been cheating on me. I walked in on them, Marcus, in our bed." Marcus's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in anger. "Jesus, Ethan, I'm so sorry. What are you going to do?" As Ethan confided in Marcus, detailing Victoria's threats and his fears, neither man noticed the intern hovering nearby, her eyes wide with interest. By the end of the day, the entire firm would be buzzing with whispers about Ethan Blackwood's scandalous divorce. Meanwhile, Victoria and Xavier began their campaign of harassment against Ethan. They spread malicious rumors in their social circle, claiming Ethan was abusive and controlling. Victoria reached out to Ethan's clients, attempting to tarnish his professional reputation with false accusations. The attacks came from all sides, leaving Ethan reeling. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from concerned friends and colleagues, asking about the rumors. Clients called, demanding explanations for accusations they'd heard. Ethan found himself constantly on the defensive, struggling to maintain his composure and his reputation. As the pressure mounted, Ethan felt increasingly cornered and desperate. The final straw came when he received a call from his bank. Victoria had drained their joint accounts, leaving him nearly penniless. This last betrayal ignited a fierce desire for revenge within Ethan. He realized that playing defense wasn't enough. He needed to fight back. With renewed determination, Ethan reached out to his old college friend, Olivia Chun, now a private investigator. They met at a quiet cafe, away from prying eyes. "Olivia, I need your help," Ethan said, his voice low and urgent. "I need you to dig into Victoria and Xavier's backgrounds. There has to be something I can use against them." Olivia studied him carefully, noting the dark circles under his eyes and the tension in his jaw. "This isn't like you, Ethan." Ethan's eyes hardened. "They've left me no choice, Liv. Victoria's trying to destroy everything I built. I need to protect myself." Olivia nodded slowly. "All right, I'll see what I can find. But Ethan, be careful. Revenge can be a double-edged sword." As Olivia began her investigation, Ethan felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since his world had imploded. He didn't know what Olivia would uncover, but he was certain of one thing. He wouldn't go down without a fight. The spark of revenge had been ignited, and Ethan was ready to fan it into a roaring flame. Olivia Chun sat in her dimly lit office, surrounded by stacks of files and the soft glow of multiple computer screens. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, eyes darting between documents as she pieced together the puzzle of Victoria Blackwood and Xavier Thornton's lives. The deeper she dug, the more her brow furrowed. This was no simple case of infidelity. It was a tangled web of deceit that stretched back years. Her phone buzzed. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. "What have you found?" His voice was taut with barely contained tension. Olivia leaned back in her chair, rubbing her eyes. "You might want to sit down for this, Ethan. It's not good." She heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Just tell me, Liv." "All right," she said, pulling up a series of documents on her main screen. "Let's start with your wife's lover. Xavier Thornton? That's not his real name. He's actually Xavier Reeves, a known con artist. He's got a history of seducing wealthy women and swindling them out of their money. He's been operating under the radar for years, always managing to stay one step ahead of the law." Ethan's silence was deafening. Olivia continued, her voice softening slightly. "And Victoria, I'm sorry, Ethan, but she's not who you thought she was either. I've uncovered a pattern of infidelity going back at least 5 years. But that's not the worst of it. She's been involved in several fraudulent business dealings. Shell companies, embezzlement, the works. Jesus Christ, Ethan muttered. How? How did I not see any of this? Olivia's heart ached for her friend. These people are professionals, Ethan. They're experts at hiding their tracks. But now we know, and that gives us an advantage. There was a long pause before Ethan spoke again, his voice hardening with resolve. You're right. Knowledge is power. Send me everything you've got. It's time to fight back. As Olivia compiled her findings into a secure file, her mind raced with the implications. This wasn't just about helping a friend anymore. They were dealing with dangerous criminals. She made a mental note to beef up her own security measures. If Victoria and Xavier got wind of her investigation, things could get ugly fast. Across town, Ethan sat in his sparsely furnished apartment, staring at the laptop screen as Olivia's report populated with document after damning document. Each new revelation felt like a physical blow, but with each hit, his resolve strengthened. He reached for his phone, scrolling through his contacts until he found the name he was looking for. Liam Blackwood, his tech-savvy cousin. If anyone could help him gather the electronic evidence needed to bring Victoria and Xavier down, it was Liam. The phone rang twice before a cheerful voice answered. Ethan, long time no hear, cuz. What's up? Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. Liam, I need your help. It's bad. Really bad. The cheerfulness drained from Liam's voice, replaced by concern. What's going on, Ethan? I can't explain everything over the phone. Can you come over? And bring your gear. We've got some digital digging to do. There was a pause. Then Liam's voice came back, firm and determined. I'm on my way. Hang tight, cuz. Whatever this is, we'll figure it out together. As Ethan ended the call, he felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks. With Olivia's investigative skills and Liam's technical expertise, they had a fighting chance. Victoria and Xavier had no idea what was coming for them. He turned back to the laptop, steeling himself to dive deeper into the sordid details of his wife's double life. Each revelation stoked the fire of his determination. They wanted to play dirty? Fine. He'd show them just how dirty he could get. The following weeks saw Ethan Blackwood undergo a transformation to the outside world. He appeared a broken man, stumbling through his days in a haze of despair. His colleagues at the architecture firm whispered behind his back, their faces etched with a mixture of pity and morbid fascination. But behind closed doors, a different Ethan emerged. With Liam hunched over multiple laptops and Olivia poring over stacks of documents, Ethan's apartment had become a war room. The walls were covered with timelines, connections, and strategies, all aimed at one goal: bringing Victoria and Xavier to justice. We need to lure them into a false sense of security, Ethan mused, pacing the length of the living room. Make them think they've won completely. Liam looked up from his screen, eyebrows raised. You sure about that, cuz? It's gonna mean taking some hits to your reputation. Ethan's jaw clenched. My reputation's already in tatters thanks to their smear campaign. At least this way, it serves a purpose. Olivia nodded approvingly. It's a smart play. If they think you're defeated, they might get sloppy, make mistakes. And so, Operation Broken Man began. Ethan started showing up to work disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed as if from crying or drinking. He fumbled presentations, missed deadlines, and generally gave the impression of a man on the verge of a complete breakdown. The whispers in the office grew louder. Poor Ethan, they'd say. He's really lost it since Victoria left him. Meanwhile, Victoria and Xavier reveled in their apparent victory. They were spotted at high-end restaurants, luxury boutiques, and exclusive clubs, spending Ethan's money with reckless abandon. Their laughter echoed through the social circles they once shared with Ethan, each public appearance another twist of the knife. But Ethan wasn't as broken as he appeared. Every night he, Liam, and Olivia worked tirelessly, building their case piece by piece. Liam's technical wizardry uncovered a trail of digital breadcrumbs linking Victoria and Xavier to their fraudulent activities. Olivia's network of contacts provided crucial pieces of the puzzle, filling in gaps and corroborating evidence. As their case grew stronger, Ethan realized they needed more. Victims' testimonies could be the nail in the coffin for Victoria and Xavier's operations. With Olivia's help, he began reaching out to those who had fallen prey to the duo's schemes. One name stood out: Sofia Alvarez, Victoria's former business partner. Ethan remembered her vaguely from cocktail parties and charity events, always standing slightly apart from the crowd, her eyes sharp and assessing. He'd always assumed she and Victoria had simply had a falling out. Now, he suspected there was much more to the story. Arranging a meeting with Sophia proved challenging. She was understandably wary, having been burned by Victoria before. But Ethan's persistence paid off, and she finally agreed to meet him at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. Sophia arrived precisely on time, her posture rigid and her eyes guarded. She slid into the booth across from Ethan, studying him carefully. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice cool and measured, "I must admit, I was surprised to hear from you. What exactly is it you want from me?" Ethan leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. "The truth, Ms. Alvarez. About Victoria. About what really happened between you two." Sophia's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of pain crossing her face before she schooled her features back into neutrality. "And why should I dredge up ancient history? What's done is done." "Because it's not ancient history," Ethan replied, sliding a folder across the table. "It's happening again. Victoria and her new partner, Xavier, are running the same schemes. They've already hurt people. They'll keep hurting people unless we stop them." Sophia's hand trembled slightly as she opened the folder, her eyes scanning the documents within. With each page she turned, her composure cracked a little more. Finally, she looked up at Ethan, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I always wondered if I was the only one," she whispered. "If I was just weak, stupid." Ethan reached across the table, gently squeezing her hand. "You weren't weak or stupid, Sophia. You were a victim. But now, you have the power to make sure there are no more victims. Will you help us?" Sophia took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. When she met Ethan's gaze again, there was steel in her eyes. "Tell me what you need me to do." As Ethan left the cafe, Sophia's agreement to testify secure, he felt a surge of triumph. The trap was set. Now, it was time to spring it. The early morning stillness was shattered by the insistent buzzing of a phone. Special Agent Sarah Donovan fumbled for her cell, squinting at the bright screen. An anonymous tip. Another dead end, probably, but in her line of work, you never knew when a seemingly insignificant lead might crack a case wide open. As she listened to the distorted voice on the other end of the line, her eyes widened. Names, dates, account numbers. Whoever this was, they had serious intel. By the time the call ended, Sarah was wide awake, her mind racing with possibilities. "Johnson," she barked, striding into the office an hour later. "I need everything we got on a Xavier Reeves, a.k.a. Xavier Thornton, and get me a liaison at the SEC. We might have a big one on our hands." Across town, Ethan Blackwood sat in his car, heart pounding as he ended the call. The burner phone felt heavy in his hand as he tossed it into the passenger seat. There was no going back now. He had just set in motion a chain of events that would either save him or destroy him completely. His phone buzzed his real phone this time. A message from Liam. Package delivered to SC. Ball's in their court now. Ethan allowed himself a smile. Victoria and Xavier had no idea what was about to hit them. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. FBI agents combed through financial records, following the trail of breadcrumbs Ethan and his team had carefully laid out. SEC investigators pored over Victoria's business dealings, uncovering layers of fraud and deceit. Victoria, meanwhile, was beginning to sense that something was amiss. Her carefully crafted world was showing cracks, and she didn't like it one bit. She paced her luxury apartment, phone pressed to her ear. "I don't care what it takes," she hissed into the receiver. "Find out who's been digging into our affairs and shut them down. Now." But it was too late. The walls were already closing in, and Victoria's desperate attempts to plug the leaks only served to draw more attention to her activities. As the pressure mounted, Victoria made a fatal mistake. In a moment of panic, she attempted to blackmail Ethan with fabricated evidence of misconduct. It was a desperate ploy, a last-ditch effort to regain control of the situation. What Victoria didn't know was that Liam had been working tirelessly to secure Ethan's digital footprint. Every email, every text message, every financial transaction, all of it was backed up and verified. Her clumsy attempt at blackmail fell flat, serving only to add another charge to the growing list of her crimes. Ethan received Victoria's blackmail attempt with a mixture of anger and satisfaction. Anger at her audacity, at the depths of her betrayal, but satisfaction, too, because this was the final piece of the puzzle. With this, they had her dead to rights. He forwarded the blackmail attempt to Agent Donovan, along with Liam's evidence proving its fabrication. Then, he sat back and waited for the hammer to fall. He didn't have to wait long. The next morning, as Ethan sipped his coffee and pretended to review blueprints at work, all hell broke loose. News alerts began popping up on his phone. Prominent businesswoman Victoria Blackwood implicated in massive fraud scheme. Con artist Xavier Reeves, a.k.a. Thornton, wanted by FBI. SEC launches investigation into Blackwood Enterprises. Ethan's colleagues gathered around the break room TV, watching in shock as Victoria's face flashed across the screen, followed by Xavier's. The newscaster's voice was hard as she detailed the charges: fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and more. Marcus appeared at Ethan's side, his face a mask of concern. "Ethan, man, did you know about any of this?" Ethan allowed his mask to slip just a little. He let Marcus see a glimpse of the pain, the anger, the satisfaction. "I had my suspicions," he said quietly, "but I never imagined it went this deep." As his co-workers buzzed with shock and speculation, Ethan slipped away to the restroom. He locked himself in a stall, took a deep breath, and allowed himself a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph. They'd done it. The trap had sprung, and Victoria and Xavier were caught right in the middle of it. But Ethan knew better than to celebrate too early. This was just the beginning. Victoria and Xavier were cornered animals now, and there was no telling what they might do in their desperation to escape. As he splashed water on his face, steeling himself for the media frenzy that was sure to follow, Ethan made a silent vow. He would see this through to the end, no matter what it took. Victoria and Xavier had tried to destroy him. Now, they would learn the true meaning of destruction. Xavier Reeves, a.k.a. Xavier Thornton, sat in the first-class lounge of JFK International Airport, his leg bouncing nervously as he checked his watch for the 10th time in as many minutes. His eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign that his hastily laid plans were about to unravel. The burner phone in his pocket buzzed. He fished it out with trembling hands, his heart rate spiking as he read the message from his contact. FBI en route. ETA 10 minutes. Get out now. Shit, Xavier muttered, shoving the phone back in his pocket and grabbing his carry-on. He'd known the walls were closing in, but he hadn't expected them to move this fast. He should have left days ago, but the promise of one last big score had been too tempting to resist. As he strode towards the exit, a flash of red caught his eye. A breaking news cheering scrolled across the bottom of a nearby TV screen. Prominent businesswoman Victoria Blackwood implicated in massive fraud scheme. Xavier froze, his blood running cold. If they had Victoria, it was only a matter of time before she gave him up. Self-preservation had always been her strongest trait. With renewed urgency, he quickened his pace, mind racing as he formulated a new escape plan. He'd need cash, a new identity, maybe a boat to slip out of the country undetected. But first, he had to get out of this damn airport. As Xavier pushed through the revolving doors into the humid New York night, he allowed himself a moment of bitter reflection. Victoria had been a means to an end, nothing more. A convenient mark with deep pockets and useful connections. But in his haste to cut and run, he'd left her to face the music alone. It wasn't personal. It was just business. Across town, Victoria Blackwood paced the polished floors of her penthouse apartment, a glass of scotch clutched in her manicured hand. The TV blared in the background, endlessly repeating the story of her downfall. "This is impossible," she muttered, taking another gulp of the amber liquid. "I cover my tracks. We covered our tracks." But the evidence scrolling across the screen told a different story. Bank records, witness testimonies, surveillance footage. It was all there, laid bare for the world to see. Her carefully constructed facade was crumbling, and Victoria found herself facing a terrifying reality. For the first time in her life, she was truly alone. Her phone had been ringing nonstop for hours. Lawyers, business associates, so-called friends, all wanting answers she couldn't provide. She'd stopped answering after the third call, unable to bear the thinly veiled accusations and hasty distancing. As the scotch burned its way down her throat, Victoria's thoughts turned to Xavier. Where was he? Why hadn't he contacted her? A cold dread settled in her stomach as she realized the truth. He'd abandoned her, just like she'd abandoned Ethan. Ethan, the name sent a jolt through her system. In all the chaos, she'd almost forgotten about her soon-to-be ex-husband. A desperate plan began to form in her mind. If anyone could help her out of this mess, it was Ethan. He'd always been the steady one, the fixer. Surely, if she appealed to their history, the love they'd once shared. With shaking hands, Victoria reached for her phone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found Ethan's name, her thumb hovering over the call button. Taking a deep breath, she pressed it, bringing the phone to her ear. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. Victoria. Ethan's voice was cold, devoid of any emotion. "Ethan, thank God." Victoria breathed, relief flooding her system. "I need your help. It's all falling apart, and I don't know what to do. Please, I know I hurt you, but no." The single word cut through her rambling like a knife. "What?" Victoria asked, thrown off balance by the flat refusal. "I said no, Victoria," Ethan repeated, his voice hard as steel. "You made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences." "But Ethan, please," Victoria pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. "We were married for 13 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. For a moment, Victoria dared to hope. Then Ethan spoke again, his words dripping with contempt. "It meant everything to me, Victoria. But I was just a tool to you, remember? Well, this tool is done fixing your messes. Goodbye." The line went dead, leaving Victoria staring at her phone in disbelief. She'd always prided herself on her ability to manipulate people, to bend them to her will. But Ethan had changed. The man she'd just spoken to was a stranger, cold, unyielding, and completely beyond her reach. As the reality of her situation sank in, Victoria felt the last vestiges of her composure crumble. She sank to the floor, the empty scotch glass rolling away as sobs racked her body. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. The courtroom buzzed with nervous energy as the bailiff called for order. Journalists scrambled for prime positions, their pens poised over notepads, eager to capture every detail of what promised to be the trial of the decade. At the defense table, Xavier Reeves and Victoria Blackwood sat side by side, a study in contrasts. Xavier exuded an air of casual indifference, his handsome features arranged in a mask of bored contempt. Victoria, on the other hand, was a tightly wound spring, her eyes darting nervously around the room as she smoothed non-existent wrinkles from her designer suit. As the judge entered and the court was called to session, a hush fell over the room. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, approached the bench. "Your Honor, the state calls Ethan Blackwood to the stand." A ripple of excitement passed through the spectators as Ethan made his way to the witness box. He cut an impressive figure in his tailored suit, his face a study in calm determination. As he raised his right hand to be sworn in, his eyes briefly met Victoria's. She flinched at the cold steel she saw there, quickly averting her gaze. The prosecutor began her questioning, leading Ethan through the sordid details of Victoria and Xavier's schemes. With each response, Ethan's voice grew stronger, more assured. He painted a vivid picture of betrayal, fraud, and callous disregard for the lives they'd ruined. From her seat at the defense table, Victoria watched in growing horror as Ethan systematically dismantled the life she'd built. Every lie, every manipulation, every fraudulent deal. He laid them all bare, backed by a mountain of irrefutable evidence. Xavier, for his part, maintained his facade of indifference. But those who looked closely might have noticed the slight tremor in his hands, the sheen of sweat on his upper lip. As Ethan's testimony continued, Xavier's eyes darted more and more frequently to the exits, like a cornered animal seeking escape. When it came time for cross-examination, Victoria and Xavier's high-priced defense attorney did his best to poke holes in Ethan's story. But Ethan remained unflappable, his responses measured and precise. For every attempted gotcha, Ethan had a ready answer, often supported by additional evidence that only served to further incriminate the defendants. As the defense attorney returned to his seat, defeat evident in the slump of his shoulders, the prosecutor called her next witness, Sofia Alvarez. Victoria's head snapped up at the name, her eyes widening in shock as her former business partner took the stand. Sofia's testimony was damning, providing intimate details of Victoria's fraudulent business practices and manipulative personality. "She told me it was just creative accounting," Sofia said, her voice thick with emotion. "By the time I realized the truth, it was too late. She'd set me up to take the fall if anything went wrong." As Sofia's testimony continued, Victoria felt the last threads of her defense unraveling. She leaned over to her lawyer, whispering urgently. The attorney frowned, shaking his head, but Victoria persisted. Finally, the attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client wishes to address the court." The judge raised an eyebrow but nodded his assent. Victoria stood, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. I'd like to make a deal," she said, her voice quavering. "I have information about Xavier, about others involved in our operations. I'm willing to testify, to tell you everything I know." Xavier's head whipped around, his eyes blazing with fury. "You treacherous bitch," he snarled, lunging towards Victoria. The bailiffs rushed to restrain him as chaos erupted in the courtroom. As Xavier was dragged away, hurling threats and obscenities, Victoria locked eyes with Ethan once more. This time, she saw something flicker behind the steely exterior. Not sympathy or forgiveness, but a satisfaction. In that moment, Victoria realized the full extent of her fall. She'd lost everything: her wealth, her status, her freedom. But worst of all, she'd lost the one person who had truly loved her, and there was no going back. The sun was setting over the city skyline, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink. Ethan Blackwood stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, a glass of champagne in hand, watching the play of light on the gleaming skyscrapers. Behind him, the sounds of celebration filled the room. Laughter, the clink of glasses, excited chatter. His team had just landed the biggest contract in the firm's history, a prestigious international project that would put them on the map in a whole new way. "There's the man of the hour." Marcus's booming voice cut through the noise as he approached, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. "How does it feel to be on top of the world, my friend?" Ethan turned, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "It feels pretty damn good, Marcus. We've come a long way." Marcus nodded, his expression growing serious for a moment. "We have indeed. There were times I wasn't sure you'd make it through after. Well, you know." Ethan's mind flashed back to those dark days after Victoria's betrayal, the struggle to keep his head above water as his personal and professional life threatened to implode. He remembered the unwavering support of friends like Marcus, the The dogged determination of Olivia as she helped uncover the truth, the technical wizardry of Liam that had been instrumental in bringing Victoria and Xavier to justice. "I couldn't have done it without all of you," Ethan said, raising his glass in a toast. "To friends who become family, and to new beginnings." As if on cue, Olivia appeared at his side, slipping her hand into his. "What are we toasting to?" she asked, her eyes twinkling. Ethan pulled her close, planting a soft kiss on her forehead. "To us," he said simply. "To surviving the storm and coming out stronger on the other side." Olivia's smile widened, a mix of pride and love shining in her eyes. What had started as a professional collaboration during the investigation had blossomed into something neither of them had expected. In Olivia, Ethan had found not just a partner, but a true equal. Someone who challenged him, supported him, and understood him in a way Victoria never had. As the party continued around them, Ethan found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this moment. The pain of betrayal, the thirst for revenge, the long nights spent building a case against those who had wronged him. It all seemed like a lifetime ago. Victoria and Xavier were serving long prison sentences, their empire of lies and fraud dismantled. The victims of their schemes, including Sofia Alvarez, had received restitution and a measure of justice. And Ethan had emerged from the crucible stronger, wiser, and more appreciative of the true riches in his life. "Penny for your thoughts?" Olivia asked, squeezing his hand gently. Ethan shook his head, chuckling softly, just thinking about how sometimes the best revenge is living well. Olivia nodded, understanding flashing in her eyes. "And are you?" "Living well, I mean." Ethan looked around the room, taking in the faces of his friends and colleagues. His gaze settled on Olivia, and he felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the champagne. "You know what?" he said, pulling her closer. "I really am." As the celebration continued into the night, Ethan allowed himself to fully embrace the moment. The past was behind him, the future bright with promise. He had weathered the storm, faced his demons, and come out the other side not just intact, but triumphant. In the end, Victoria's cruel words had proven prophetic, though not in the way she had intended. Ethan had indeed been a tool for justice, for redemption, and ultimately for his own salvation. And as he raised his glass one more time, surrounded by the people who truly mattered, Ethan Blackwood knew that he had finally found the passion, spontaneity, and excitement that had been missing from his life for far too long. The city lights twinkled below, a testament to the endless possibilities that lay ahead. And Ethan was ready to embrace them all, one triumphant step at a time. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.